Music and romance in France, healthy brain, happy life. Everyone agrees that there is a particular time, called the critical period, during the first 6 months of life when the brain is particularly good at learning languages. In addition, work from the University of Washington has shown that babies' brains can soak up and learn not just one language but multiple languages during this time. But what if you start learning a new language a little later in life? Like most people of my generation, I began learning a second language, in my case French, at the ripe old age of 12 when I got to middle school. What part of my brain helped me learn this second language? It turns out that the brain does rely on many of the same areas as are used when learning to speak your native tongue. However, you also seem to recruit additional brain areas to help you with a second late-learned language. These additional areas are situated toward the bottom part of the frontal lobe on the left side, called the inferior frontal gyrus. You also use the left parietal lobe. Another study showed that people who learned a language later in life had a thicker cortex in the left interior frontal gyrus and thinner cortex in the right inferior frontal gyrus. Learning a second language at 12 years or later provides another example of brain plasticity. The brain, when prodded to make connections, will indeed do so. It might take longer and be more difficult, but it's possible. I loved the year I spent in France because it completely immersed me in a foreign and exotic culture. That year abroad also brought me one of the most romantic experiences of my life. It all started with my request to live with a family in Bordeaux who had a piano that I could play. I played the piano from the time I was about 7 until I was a senior in high school, and I still played while studying at Berkeley. Monsieur and Madame Boville were a lovely couple whose home had a few extra bedrooms upstairs, one of which housed a piano. Soon after I arrived, Madame Boville asked me to make sure I was at home one particular afternoon at a specific time because she had hired a piano tuner to come. I happily agreed and waited for a French guy named Francois. He set about tuning my piano and chatting with me in French, of course. Before that day, I never thought I was notably the same or similar English words. But I had never taken an oral exam in my academic career, much less in my second language. I was petrified. One of my clearest memories from this time was while I responded to the professor's questions during an oral exam. I was extremely nervous and had completely lost my ability to speak with a proper French accent. The words and the grammar coming out of my mouth were all French, but the sounds were pure American. I could hear myself speaking French with an extreme American accent. I ended up acing all my classes. This experience in France also gave me another unexpected and what turned out to be a lifelong gift. In France, I became fascinated with the study of memory, another form of brain plasticity. I had great good luck taking a course at the University of Bordeaux called Neuropsychology of Memory. I had no idea there was a strong neuroscience group at the University of Bordeaux when I chose it, but what a lucky coincidence. Jafford was the first to teach me about the history of the study of memory and the raging debates of the day involving two researchers at the University of California, San Diego. Most importantly, Jafford took student volunteers in his lab. As a result, I happily began testing little black mice on memory tasks in my spare time, giving me my first real taste of laboratory research. I loved it in the lab. It made it easy for me to decide that I wanted to apply to graduate school after finishing my undergraduate degree. In between studying for classes and working in the lab, there was Francois. It turns out that he not only tuned pianos but played the piano and had a near-obsessive fascination with the harmonies of the Beach Boys. So I had found a French guy with California in his heart. He had many tapes of the Beach Boys albums, and I would often find him in his living room listening intently to them through his headphones as he tried to painstakingly transcribe all the complex chords they used to create their sound. He was doing this with such glee and concentration that I hated interrupting his sessions. I was a big Beach Boys fan, but I had never fully appreciated the complexities of their harmonies before Francois. I thought the Beach Boys were just fun and easy to dance to, but Francois, with his trained musical ear, showed me his favorite chords and riffs in that music. One of the many things we enjoyed doing together was playing piano duets. At first, Francois had only one piano in his apartment. Still, because he worked at the biggest piano store in town, he eventually borrowed a second piano to practice and play our duets in his apartment, where I was spending increasing amounts of my time. But the entertaining part was when we went to the piano shop at night after it had closed. In the empty store, we performed our duets on the big beautiful 8-foot concert grand pianos used for performances in the local theaters. We played as loud and long as we wanted, and the beautiful tones of these pianos made even the mistakes sound good. I consider these evenings some of the loveliest times I spent in France. In addition to playing classical music together, we listened to a lot of it. One of my favorites was the Bach solo cello suites. I listened to Francois's record of Yo-Yo Ma playing these pieces repeatedly. It turns out that Francois noticed how much I loved them, and that Christmas, I received the most precious gift that I had ever received before or since, a cello. I was stunned. Do you ever wonder what happens in your brain when you hear that piece of music you can listen to over and over again? The one that may even give you chills just listening? Robert Zator and his colleagues at the Montreal Neurological Institute showed that when people listened to music that gave them a strong emotional and physiological response, the brain showed significant changes in the areas involved in reward, motivation, emotion, and arousal. So as Francois and I delved into playing and listening to music together, we were also activating the reward and motivation centers in our brains. No wonder I loved France so much. So my French-enriched environment gave me a new language, a new persona, romance, adventure, and, of course, I have to add to the list, great food and wine. It was during this time and with Francois that I also really developed my love of French cuisine. My parents, and in fact my whole family, are great lovers of food, and any big celebration, whether it be a graduation or a recital, has always been celebrated at a wonderful restaurant. But in France, my food experiences stepped up to a whole new, more sophisticated level. While I was a poor college student, you could still eat and drink like a king in Bordeaux. Yes, I worked and studied like the science geek that I was, but I ate, drank, and spent leisure time playing the piano like a sexy, flirtatious, exotic French woman in love. Studies show that there are only 2 brain areas where neurogenesis can occur once we grow into adulthood. The first brain area is the hippocampus, which is crucial for long-term memory and mood, and the second is the olfactory bulb. This brain area is responsible for our sense of smell and contributes to our sense of taste. This suggests that my French adventure was not only teaching me a lot about food and wine appreciation, but might actually have been enhancing the size of my olfactory bulb. The world-class wallflower from Sunnyvale had a fantastic French boyfriend and a rich social, food, and cultural life. It was easy to do in such an enriching, stimulating environment.